Today on the Topping Show, Trump mugshot creates record fundraising amounts, Bud Light NFL Sunday ticket tweet fails, Nordstrom closes their San Francisco store after 35 years, Anheuser-Busch donating water tweet mostly evaporates, Amazon Prime and Netflix choose not to host Sound of Freedom, the state of California is suing in an attempt to block parents from being told what their children are doing at school in regard to transitioning, Texas passes a special registration for electric vehicles, the DOJ is suing Elon Musk for not breaking the law and by hiring refugees, Mitsubishi has a truck with 3 pedals, but not for the United States. Rolex to buy Bucherer to enter retail for the first time. Thermomix is moving to Texas. HP printer lawsuit is moving forward. And 3M is on track for the largest payout in tort history at $5.5 billion. All of that and much more on The Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of Topping Show is sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder released twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, need those assistance, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Now, going over to the business part of the podcast, you have Mitsubishi coming out with a truck with 3 pedals, but unfortunately, alas, it is not for North America. Now, the Mitsubishi Triton features a turbo diesel engine with between 243 and 347 foot-pound of torque and offered with a 6-speed manual transmission, 4-wheel drive system, and also includes 2-speed transfer case and a center-limited slip differential. Now, Mitsubishi actually left the United States market for trucks back in 2009 after the demise of the Dodge Dakota, where they basically just rebadged it and made it a Mitsubishi Raider. Now, oddly enough, Mitsubishi actually remains a large player for mid-size trucks over across the pond, and past generations has all been the Triton. It's been a staple apparently the Southeast Asian markets, but we don't get that here, partially because of a myriad of specific taxes and tariffs when it comes to trucks coming into the United States. But it's sorely disappointing since the United States there's only one truck with 3 pedals these days, which is a good truck, but it's the good old Toyota Tacoma. So it's a little bit smaller. It's a lightweight duty truck, but that's the only option we have in North America for a truck that's actually fun to drive. How ridiculous. How disappointing is that? We just can't have nice things apparently. But it is also fascinating to know that Mitsubishi is actually growing in other parts of the globe. And granted, the parent company, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, a large conglomerate, they're hugely diversified. A lot of people in the U.S. don't realize how vastly just huge they are. But in the U.S., they kind of leveled off after the Lancer Evo. After that demise, like, And now they're going to bring that back, the Eclipse, as a SUV crossover, which it's almost like these automotive companies are addicted to butchering their old products by taking those glorious names from legendary vehicles and using them for mediocre, rudimentary SUVs, crossovers, and EV vehicles. It's quite disappointing to say the least. Hopefully someday we'll get the manual transmission for trucks in the United States again. The last that I know of, and correct me in the comments, was Dodge, where they had a couple of their trucks you could actually get with 3 pedals. But long gone are the days we can get a Chevy or a Ford F-150, 250, 350, 450, whatever trim level you want, with three pedals, as all trucks should have. But fascinating to see there is some hope for the manual transmission globally. Hopefully those sales increase. Maybe the laws change in the U.S. so it's much easier to import trucks. It'll be interesting to see, but I always say time shall tell. Other interesting business news, you have Rolex buying Bucherer and entering the retail for the first time. Now, granted, this also perhaps shows how unclassy or perhaps my lack of experience with the brands where I don't even know that's how you pronounce it, Bucherer. Needless to say, their marketing gets an F- because it's not really intuitive to pronounce. Now, Rolex, on the other hand, everyone knows Rolex. They've been around since the dawn of time, or so it seems. They're actually established back in 1908, which I know United States test scores at an all-time low. So we'll do a little bit of math here today. That is precisely 118 years ago. And it was also founded by Hans Willdorf as well as Alfred Davis. And ironically enough, like a lot of these brands, they used to be considered entry-level. They used to be considered a very durable, kind of like a utilitarian product. You see the same thing with Ray-Bans. Ray-Bans used to be dirt cheap, and they were more of a utility thing. They got a couple of military contracts throughout the years, same with Rolex. Of course, now everything pretty much every brand for glasses is owned by one giant foreign company. So now, those glasses are now, what is it? Like $200 plus? Don't get me wrong, they're great glasses, but it's fascinating to see what today's luxury, yesterday used to be much more of a utilitarian thing. In fact, most of Rolex's old commercials and promos are about people using them in athletics, going all over the globe, literally. And perhaps one of the most iconic images is of James Cameron, the director, having his Rolex, I forget what model it is, but it goes all the way down to the lowest point of the ocean. Now, going back to the relevant, I know the little background of Rolex, and obviously you could tell I'm quite classy. I have a Garmin, I actually got for free, the best ROI on the planet. This Garmin's like, what? Shoot, it's probably 9 years old. Still works like a charm, and ironically actually more accurate than Rolex, since Rolex is a mechanical movement, but I digress. In terms of Rolex buying Bucherer, Bucherer is actually a major retailer and vendor of high-end products. They've been in business for 135 years, and they own 36 brick-and-mortar locations across the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Austria, and Denmark, and of course you have its main market of Switzerland. From a business perspective, it's fascinating to see Rolex, where for most of their history, they've been the producer of the product. They didn't really sell them. They always used, brick and mortar stores, third party. They had Rolex authorized stores, very similar to a car dealership, where if you go buy a Chevy at a Chevy dealership, well, General Motors doesn't own that. It's basically a licensing agreement where a mom and pop shop or a business will pay General Motors a licensing fee to be a dealership, an authorized dealer, so to say. Very similar to watches. Now, I can't help but think, and I don't know if this is a conspiracy theory with maybe the market fixing itself or the market being fixed, but I can't help but notice the past 24 months especially, the watch market has gotten astronomically expensive. People are buying watches just to flip them now. It's a whole industry now more than ever, and it's just more and more people diving into that category. And I think Rolex kind of noticed, hey, we're making the product, but people are sometimes doubling or tripling their money just by selling it. They're not customizing it or doing anything to increase the value. But if they own the store Bucherer now, they'd be able to partake in that increase in the revenue share and charge what is rudimentally known as the market going rate, I think is a popular term. So it'll be interesting to see, does this increase the cost of Rolexes? Do they just, at the end of the day, get to take more capital home? From a mechanical engineering perspective, it is fascinating. Rolex is one of the very few companies on the planet where they actually make every single component in-house. And I believe they actually own some of the foundries that create the raw material for the metals. So they ingest raw material in terms of metals, and they pump out works of art, handmade, obviously, fancy. Hard to beat a submariner or submariner. They look really cool and fancy. One of these days, perhaps. But, as I said, it'll be interesting to see where Rolex goes from here, but it's a pretty good bet they'll be around for quite some time, of course. But I always say, time shall tell. Other interesting business news, you have Thermomix moving their headquarters to Texas. Now, they're actually, and I don't know this, a kitchen appliance manufacturer with a yearly revenue of about $30 million. And they use a direct sales model through in-home, tactile cooking experiences hosted by independent sales consultants via e-commerce. And they claim the brand is used in more than 11 million kitchens worldwide, which, now that I think about it, isn't too crazy since, how many kitchens are there around the planet? And they only have about 8 million, or no, 11 million. That's not too big. That is greater than zero. Now, it looks like they said they, quote, "We are excited to root ourselves in the rich tapestries of Texas, feel our long-term future, and heat up the appreciation for the world of home cooking in new and exciting ways," unquote. This is from their CEO, Frank Lundquist. And of course, they have his last name might sound, they have a giant parent company over in Germany, which is, I believe, valued in the trillions. Of course, this is yet perhaps example 9,998,735 of a business moving from California to the land of the free, also known as Texas. I might be a little biased, but can't help but notice every business seems to move away from California to Texas. It's almost as if companies like having a low cost of living and doing what's best for their employees. Will other places change? I doubt it at this point, but we'll see. Other interesting business news, you have Hewlett-Packard class action lawsuit for disabled printers. It appears it is actually moving forward. Now, this is actually especially fascinating when I consider, you go on LinkedIn And a lot of these tech companies, you really never see a lot of negative news. Like, I didn't see this article on LinkedIn, which perhaps is because maybe Microsoft is a big HP shop. And of course, you have to delineate HP printers is Hewlett Packard. Hewlett Packard Enterprise, that's the company that got all the traditional data center stuff. So like servers, storage, networking, wireless access points. Those are all on the HPE business, which is legally a whole separate entity formed back in 2000, I believe, was it 16 back in the day? But HP Inc., the one that consumers mainly know, the laptops, printers, that's an entirely different company, still headquartered out of California for now. And it looks like they've gotten in a little hot water. Now, the plaintiffs say that HP all-in-one printers, they actually won't scan or fax if they're low on ink. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, why the hell would you need ink to fax something or to scan something or copy something? Well, that's exactly right. You don't need it for that. It seems like it's literally just to force you to buy more ink, which is one of the most expensive legal substances on the planet. It is quite literally thousands of dollars per gallon if you were to get a gallon of ink. And it looks like they claim that printer ink can exceed $80 an ounce. And it's more expensive than pretty much everything. They say, silver, caviar, champagne. Now, specifically, this is from the Courthouse News Service. They go and dive in. They say, a federal judge in North California on last Thursday, advanced a class action lawsuit against HP over its all-in-one printers, and they specified a couple plaintiffs that they were unable to use any of the other functions when their printer ink was low. Now, it looks like the first version of the lawsuit was filed back in June 2022 and did not include a reason for the apparent design flaw. So it seems like now they're starting to realize, well, perhaps they just use this to disable it. And I apologize if there's any issues with the autofocus. I'm trying a new software out. And for the life of me, I can barely tell if it's in focus these days, at least during production. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully this works. I don't know. There we go. Now, it moved around. I noticed it moved up and down. So we'll see. Hopefully the focus is working better today than it was last time. But as I always say, time shall tell. Now, going on to the culture part of the podcast, you have Bud Light trying to tweet again, and of course they fail epically. Now, this specifically is their situation where they're actually giving tickets away, and apparently they just can't give them away. Now, keep in mind, most of these are like Saints tickets. So this is a tweet where they had all the Saints, and I can't help but feel bad for the Saints. I don't know if this is probably a really long ago contract that they negotiated, and now all of a sudden they have to work with them still. So it was a commercial where you have a bunch of people in Saints, and apparently they have a football team, and all the Saints swags, they got hats, jerseys, all that crap. And all these statistics are from the first 5 hours of the tweet. And in 5 hours, the tweet only got 38.6 thousand views and 125 likes, which, again, not even the people working at Bud Light are liking it, apparently. That's 0.32% of people like it. Now, I can only see this because I use my business profile account to actually see the account of Bud Light, because they blocked me because I had the audacity of having a reply reminder saying, when they said, like, oh yeah, it's time to buy Bud Light, I responded with a case of Yailing Light and Yailing Regular with the American flag behind it saying, hey, thanks for the reminder, I need to go buy this. And apparently that hurt their feelings, although still not as bad as censoring my YouTube videos as I can't notice the only time that I have YouTube videos with the comments disabled. One, ironically, is when I criticize YouTube for disabling more contents and disabling ad blockers. And two, is like 1 or 2 Bud Light videos where I had Bud Light in the title and I critiqued the company. And even more ironic is when I had a video specifically talking about the video that was censored that had the subject of Bud Light. Hilarious, yes. Coincidence? I don't think so. Now, Rich Mooney is a really popular replier to these Bud Light tweets. He does his usual poll where he said, hey, what are you going to buy this weekend? Are you going to get a Bud Light or are you going to get an Anheuser-Busch InBev product? He got 72 votes and 92% said no Anheuser-Busch InBev. And then they censored that. So it looks like Bud Light's getting really censored. They're going after everyone. Now, Rich Mooney also, to the same tweet, he brought up an article where the CEO of InBev, so the giant company, they're saying how they see the consumer preferences. They had that poll recently, so they think people are coming back. And he said they're very much delusional that CEO is out of touch, because of course he is. Now, that comment by Rich Mooney got 1,709 views and 46 likes, giving you a good old 2.7% like ratio. So needless to say, it seems no matter how much they try to tweet, the fans just won't let it stop. It'll be interesting to see, where do they choose in terms of, do they just keep going forward, or do they learn and maybe hire someone else for marketing or sell it back? I don't know how they'll recover, but let me know if you think they can. Other interesting cultural news, you have San Francisco, or Nordstrom rather, closing their San Francisco store after it was there for 35 years. Wow. Now, Nordstrom said, quote, "Dynamics of the downtown San Francisco market have changed dramatically over the past years, impacting customer foot traffic to our stores and the ability to operate successfully," unquote. That is perhaps the nicest, most politically correct way of saying your area sucks, because they're not prosecuting criminals. It is basically the Wild West. I would say actually worse, because they actually prosecute the good guys in California. And just a couple weeks ago, that same store had $100,000 of merchandise just stolen by a bunch of guys in black hoodies. And they actually came in with bear mace. They maced the security guard, and they stole $100,000 of inventory, which I guess was maybe that was kind of them, because now they don't have to move as much stuff. That's sarcasm, folks. It is impossible to run business there. And they used to be the anchor store of the mall. Now, in terms of the mall, it looks like the San Francisco Center has taken a significant hit. The sales plunged from 455 million in 2019 to 298 million in 2022, and foot traffic went down from 9.7 million visits in 2019 to 5.6 million in 2022. This is according to the mall operator Westfield, who recently said they're going to abandon it because they just can't make a profit. Which, I can't imagine things getting better. But the only retailer the audacity to move to San Francisco in the past year was IKEA. Now, granted, maybe it's because the people who steal are usually too lazy to assemble furniture. That could be a theory, but I don't know who that store might be for. I mean, who's moving to San Francisco these days? No one. Businesses are leaving in droves. And you get what you vote for. They voted to... It used to be a felony to steal stuff in California. Now they said, if you steal anything below $950, it is now categorized as a misdemeanor. And of course, when you're prosecuted by the state, more often than not, it's a negotiation where they'll decrease the charge just to get a plea, so it doesn't have to go to court. So it's typically you save time and resources. So because it's already a misdemeanor, they're going to kick that down or just not prosecute it at all. So they're getting exactly what they wanted. I can't help but feel maybe they'll change their mind in the future somehow. But right now it's like a black hole, and I don't see any businesses taking the risk of moving there anytime soon. But that's just me. That's just my 3 cents. It used to be 2 cents, but had increased to 3 cents. Should be 4, really, with all this hyperinflation. But I'm a nice guy, so we'll do 3 cents it is. Though it is still free to click that subscribe button, and it is much appreciated. Other interesting cultural news, you have Anheuser-Busch tweeting and bragging that they're donating water, but that tweet basically evaporated into nothing. Now, these statistics are all taken for the first 10 hours of it being posted. So at the 10th hour mark, I measured all these, and your eyes are, thankfully, they will not be hurt today. Well, besides the usual beautiful things you get to see. But there's a little 1-minute video they put here. Go ahead and play that really quick, and we'll analyze it.
Most days, we brew beer, but today...
Not these days, because, again, they've lost about, 30% of their sales? So these days, they don't do that too much. In fact, you would say they would do it 30% less.
We're canning water.
Canning water.
Water for when disaster strikes.
For the next...
Disaster strikes? Well, I mean, their marketing has been a disaster, so in theory, they should probably just sell this to try to recoup that loss. They won't, but...
Hurricane.
For the next tornado. For the next flood. For the next shortage.
I feel bad. There's a guy who actually... So this is Anheuser-Busch, the parent company. There's a guy in the commercial, and he literally had to wear a Bud Light uniform. Like, oh, Ow, that's gotta hurt. How does he go and have a drink with his friends after that? I don't know. He'll have new friends, perhaps.
For volunteer firefighters. For the American Red Cross.
For people who need it.
Whoever they are. Wherever they are.
It's pretty transphobic. I don't see a single person dancing in this video. Will they be boycotted by them this week? There's not a single provocative dancer for children. They're going to get boycotted.
Oh man, this is great.
I got some text, sappy text on the screen. So it says, we've delivered more than 90 million cans of emergency drinking water since 1988. Okay. Tort. That's who we are. Their grammar is not the best. Then on the screen it says, that's who we are. That's who you were. You're not them anymore. No one respects this company, hardly. They've just lost all their credibility. And again, it's also one of those things where there are many reasons businesses do philanthropic activities like that. It's good PR, but it's also a tax write-off too, which there's a kind of misinformation when it comes to people's understanding. Just because it's tax write-off doesn't mean you didn't have to generate the money to get there, because you're still spending money on that. So a little bit of misinformation in that regard, but it looks like pretty much most of the responses were just ratioing it. So you had Rich Mooney again saying, quote, if you lend a handout of genuine concern, don't brag about how much of a good person you are. So basically saying, hey, you really don't. Now, in this, I don't critique them as terribly. Don't get me wrong, it's still a terrible commercial, but pretty much every company that does donations likes to brag about it just because it is marketing mostly for them. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a couple of businesses that have really authentic stances on certain things and they do want to actually do good, but I would say a lot of times it is also marketing. Now, a second response from Rich Mooney is actually a graphic of a guy pulling someone up, and it said, quote, if you're helping someone and expecting something in return, you're doing business, not kindness, unquote. Now, that got 323 views and 10 likes. That's a 3.1% like ratio, which is quite good. And it just goes to show you it's not letting up in terms of the critique. And the only comments that aren't like negative are the ones saying like your rebate's not working. This one actually just says your most pathetic post yet. That got 2 likes. And they're also hiding more and more of these comments. They are ramping up the censorship like no tomorrow. A couple of these people, oh yeah, this guy just says, still nope. Another one says, America still hates you. Another one says, let me see here. Is Dylan passing out water? In reference to Dylan Mulvaney, who helped them lose about, $28 billion in stock evaluation and $400 million in sales lost, which is an achievement in and of itself. Another one says, you are trans supporters. I'm not getting behind that. I mean, I'm not saying a single person. There's one, Allison Mary Knox said, thanks for all you do. I wonder what let me see here. And she is, exclude. So she looks like she's a leftist. So someone who is very much politically on the left side of the political aisle. And in terms of the Bud Light situation, they did gain a little support from that side of the political aisle. They also kind of ostracized some of them as well because they didn't stick by Dylan Mulvaney. That was the words of actually a bar operator headquartered out of Chicago. They had 4 gay bars in Chicago, which, actually now I think about it, I'm surprised there's not more. Well, that's just the one company, nevertheless. But they said because Bud Light didn't stick up for Dylan, they're dropping all of the Anheuser-Busch products from their bars. So you also have people on the left boycotting the company as well. I don't see the throttle being let up anytime soon for this boycott, but let me know if you think, are these tweets helping yet? Are they actually helping the company's image? I don't think so, but that's just me. Other interesting cultural news, you have Amazon Prime and Netflix banning Sound of Freedom, which, of course, I mean, why have a movie that makes a profit when you could just censor it? Now, it looks like they had a budget of $15 million to make Sound of Freedom, and it made about $181 million at the box office. So one of the few movies this year that actually made a profit, which in Hollywood basically doesn't happen. This is an independent studio. And the movie was about saving children. Trying to think, if you have kids listening, earmuffs or remove them from the room. But it's a very heart-wrenching movie where it's talking about how they're trying to rescue kids from being trafficked. Which, I don't know how this I suppose we do know why it became political, but it is disappointing that I can't think of a single reason why couldn't all Americans get behind this and say, hey, this is something that every person with a soul should care about, everyone with a modicum of morality or intelligence. Like, who could be against this message of literally saving kids? But it quickly became political. It was called a conspiracy theory. And basically, people on the right and people in the middle cheered the movie on. And people on the left in the traditional Hollywood, like the mainstream media, they all said the movie was, terrible. It was a conspiracy. And it's not too surprising that Netflix isn't going to host. Now, Netflix is also the company that hosted a film or a series called Cuties, in which they had underage girls perform adult acts such as gyrating and twerking to inappropriate music. Now, there's a little boycott to that movie, or to that thing. So a fair amount of people did quit Netflix because they hosted that morally vacuous, disgusting thing. But it is fascinating that Netflix would rather have gyrating young girls on their platform than host a movie about saving those children from some of the most morally vacuous humans on the planet performing the most disgusting acts on the planet. So that kind of shows you Netflix priorities. I shouldn't be too shocked, though, given their history. Interestingly enough, Rumble, one of the fastest growing streaming platforms, they have volunteered to actually have the movie hosted on their platform for streaming. Now, unfortunately, I don't know how much that'll increase the overall viewership or the audience, because inherently Rumble is more politically on the right, kind of just by its very nature of being an alternative media, because YouTube traditionally bans people overwhelmingly on the right. I've yet to see a single person politically on the left side of the aisle actually get banned off YouTube. But so that just by its very nature, more people who are right-minded are going to be going to the alternative platforms. So it'll be good if they host the movie, but I don't think you're going to reach the wider audience that I think would be much more beneficial to have it on a major streaming platform. So that's kind of the downside of the current streaming services at the moment, is that a lot of them are kind of broken down by political ideologies. So it'll be interesting to see, and hopefully the movie continues to have great success. It is one of the best box office hits of the year, and I wish them the best. Going on to the political part of the podcast, you have the Department of Justice suing SpaceX for not hiring refugees and obeying the law, which, with our current political climate and the government, I'm not too surprised at all, actually. So Elon Musk is getting in trouble because he didn't hire 9 U.S. citizens. So does that make any logic? Well, I was going to say, for some people that makes a lot of sense. For some, a little bit more lower on the evolutionary ladder, so to say. Now, it's one of those things where SpaceX makes rockets, and they fall under ITAR. ITAR specifically is the International Traffic in Arms Regulations, and in the United States, it is a regulatory regime to restrict and control the export of defense and military-related technologies to safeguard the U.S. national security and further U.S. foreign policy objectives. Now, you see this if you're into the Second Amendment, so if you're an American. If you go to the sporting goods store, you'll actually see the sticker on some of these items, whether it be a night vision or a scope for a rifle, or even some magazines for a rifle. Again, there's no such... Clips are basically non-existent. Magazines are what people always refer to improperly, but it's one of those things where they'll say on the sticker, you cannot export this. You need special paperwork, and you have to make sure it's being shipped to an authorized allied country, so to say. And part of working the DoD and being a DoD contractor and working for the federal government and working in the defense industry is you have to have U.S. citizenship, partially for international security reasons. And there's a lot of speculation. Why go after Elon Musk after this? And a lot of people just can't help but think it's politically motivated because he bought X.com, or X, or which used to be Twitter. And they used to censor a lot of conservatives, a lot of people on Twitter, as well as acquiesce to every ask of the government in terms of giving them all the vast amounts of data. And Elon's much more about the Second Amendment and the Bill of Rights than his predecessors or the owners of the company. So a lot of people are speculating maybe that's why. He's also been warm to political folks such as DeSantis, as well as Vivek Ramaswamy. So there's a lot of speculation. He's probably politically motivated. But because I can't think of, because if you were to hire those people, he would get a lawsuit then. Because they're not privy to that knowledge. It's national security risk to have them working on those items. So it's one of those situations where, depending on your political affiliation, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Now, hopefully times change, but of course I'm a little bit more skeptical than usual. But I always say, time shall tell, and we will see. Other interesting political news, you have California, the state, is suing to stop parents from outing trans kids to their parents. Now, I can't help but think a good telltale sign that someone is morally vacuous or just disgusting or evil is they want to hide secrets from parents. The school is not the parents are the parents, which used to be common sense. Nowadays, the government thinks they're in charge of your children. Yet reason 1/billionth to get your kid out of public school, in my opinion. Now, this is coming from Politico.com, so the vernacular is we'll have to decipher it to logic. So they're saying from Sacramento, California, State Attorney General Rob Bonta filed a lawsuit Monday to stop a Southern California school district from outing transgender students to their parents, arguing that the policy violates the students' civil and constitutional rights and could cause them mental, emotional, psychological, and potentially physical harm. Now, if we deconstruct it or we actually just send it through a translation machine of crazy to common sense, they want to hide secrets from the parents. So the kids are being, in many cases, pushed in different directions, both ideologically as well as sexually out of schools. They want to hide that from the parents. How are they not being charged as predators? Now, they go on to say, Bonita's suit against Chino Valley Unified School District is the latest attempt by Democratic state officials to combat the recent adoption of such policies by conservative school boards. The outcome of the case could have bearings on other districts that have enacted similar rules in the last 2 months, including a bunch of school, Anderson High School. So you do have conservative schools, or just people with common sense, saying schools are not allowed to keep secrets from the parents. And if a student is doing something, it is the parent's right to know. Because, again, it's the parent's child, not the school's child. So you have some places, and this is another thing. They're saying, quote, our message to, this is from Mr. Bonita, or Bonta, quote, our message to Chino Valley Unified and all school districts in California is loud and clear. We will never stop fighting for the civil rights of LGBTQ plus students, quote. So he's evil because he forgot the I, which stands for, I don't remember, but I know sometimes they say the acronym with the I. So another thing, when it comes to the transgender debate, there's a lot of people in the gay community or the LG community, not LG the TV, LG the stuff, but they're pretty offended by this because a lot of these politicians are insinuating that it's all one category, which by its very nature, these are groups of different categories. And there's a specific Twitter account that actually is venomously against children being taken advantage of called Gays Against Groomers. And their whole political ideology or their philosophy is that you should not be transitioning their kids when, again, they can't consent because they're a child. We have no idea what the long-term effects of these drugs are. In many cases, they're permanently sterilizing children. And they find it morally vacuous, as many of us do. So that's an instance where, again, they're trying to say, I don't believe that whole community believes in these types of initiatives, and that Twitter handle that group is a good association. But this politician is trying to make it all seem like everyone's on the same ideology, when there's much more nuance to it. There's a lot of people that are against these things. Now, backers. This is even fascinating. So backers have characterized the policy as a parental rights issue. You're goddamn right. Now, but Bonita alleges that the school board is unlawfully discriminating against transgender and gender non-binary students. He goes on to say, quote, in discussing the policy before its passage, board members have made a number of statements describing students who are transgender or gender nonconforming as suffering from mental illness or perversion, or being a threat to the integrity of the nation and the family, unquote. Which, suffering from perversion. I have yet to see that being used as a common vernacular with this subject or this issue, but I think a lot of people are on the side of the parents and how they should have rule over their kids because they are the ones who know them. They literally know what's best for the kids because they know the kids are their kids. So it'll be interesting to see if this gets passed. You have a lot of other countries who are moving very quickly. It's a very fluid issue. There's a lot of things, well, pun moderately intended, but it's hard to keep track of all these different policies in all these different states and all these different countries because they are moving so quick. You wind back the clock a couple years ago, Europe was very much into the transitioning of kids, but upon further examination of the evidence, or lack of evidence, not knowing the long-term side effects, they actually stopped that practice. So, contrary to popular belief, Europe is actually not going this route when it comes to the debate or of this particular topic. And I can't help but think a lot of parents, and again, there are parents who also want to transition their kids. It's one of those things where no one really knows what's going to happen long term, and a lot of people are too scared to talk about the negative side effects. So it'll be interesting to see what the voters choose in California, but I would think most people would agree that the parents have a right to know what their kid is saying at school, what the teachers are saying to the kids at school, and there are some schools where they actually put the kids on drugs that start the transition process. And the people who are, some say it's a pejorative term, I tend to agree in terms of the use case of it, but other people would also argue that teachers using different pronouns to the students is setting them on the path to be physically transitioned later. So there's a lot more nuance to this topic, but overall I think the final vote when it comes down to the public perception and legally what gets done, I think it's going to be an issue of who wants the parents to have the final say, who thinks the parents are right, who thinks the state is right, and who thinks is appropriate to hide data from the parents. So I'm one of those people where I'm a free speech absolutist. You can't help but notice all the comments that are always open on my videos, with the exception is when YouTube actually censors it. I've gone back more than 9 times now on the Bud Light video where I will change the video so it says allow all comments, but YouTube immediately disables it. So I'm one of those people where I think every topic, the more free speech, the better, because the more public debate, the more philosophical discussions, the best ideas will brew to the surface. So I don't think it's ever appropriate to have censorship, especially when you have the parents being put in the dark by design. That, to me, I think that should scare the living hell out of every parent. And it'll be interesting to see what people vote for and how the initiative passes, or maybe it gets pushed back. But I always say, time shall tell. Other interesting political news, you have Texas passing a special registration for EVs. Now, this is actually starting September 1st, so right around the corner. EV owners must pay an initial registration fee of $400 and an annual fee of $200. Now, this is in addition to the annual Texas vehicle registration fee of $50.75 that most cars and trucks pay. The bill was previously approved by Texas in March in terms of the Texas Senate, and approved in April by the House of Representatives, and then signed into law by Texas Governor Greg Abbott in May. So, and then a lot of people are wondering, well, this isn't really, people always say, well, that's not really fair because, I mean, you bought an EV because it's better for the environment. First of all, it's not. Depending on where you live, it's actually worse for the environment, depending on how you get your electricity. Also, those batteries are not very easily recyclable. They're quite volatile, using a bunch of lithium. Also, just Google or go on the internet and ask, let's see a lithium mine. How does that look with all those chemicals and those kids mining it? But I partially digress. They actually are still using the road the same or more than gas engines. Now, an internal combustion engine, again, which will last a quarter of a century and 1,000,000 miles, those benefit the state with the tax from the gasoline. Now, currently, the Texas gas tax is 20 cents per gallon, and the average driver is paying $9. I know inflation is bad. It's not that bad. $9.52 per month in state fuel taxes, according to the Texas Department of Transportation. So you're paying a gas tax, and also there's a federal tax on that, which is kind of sad when you think of how many taxes you pay at the end of the day, when we literally divorced Britain with the greatest revolution in history because they taxed tea. Nowadays, you have a 40% income tax from the feds, maybe another 10% from the state for your income tax, 8% for sales tax, gas tax, property tax. It's astonishing. I always contend or just tell people, if someone's to sit down and actually calculate all the taxes they're paying, they would just stop working, which some people do because it's a perverse incentive system in the United States. But another topic for another time. The reason they're saying EVs need to have this special tax, basically, this registration fees, because they're not paying that gas tax, but they're still using the roads. So right now, if you're using an internal combustion engine, every time you buy gasoline, every gallon, that's 20 cents that goes to fixing the roads. You also have tolls and fees that also go into it as well. But the gas tax is also a big revenue maker for the states for those road initiatives. So not too surprised. There's a lot of speculation when EVs first started to be mass produced, how the government's going to react to it. At the end of the day, just unfortunately, no, you're going to be taxed to hell no matter what you do. So the same thing when it came to the internet, and you had e-commerce, where in the very beginning, the good old days when the internet was the Wild West, you can go online and buy a pair of speakers or some new pedal covers for a 3-speed manual transmission with all the nice pedals. You can buy that, and there's no sales tax on it because the government really doesn't know technology, or the people passing laws don't know technology specifically, and they were a little slow to the game. But once the government realized, oh wait, people are spending money on the internet, why don't we get almost like a mob? What's going to be our cut? How are we going to wet our whistle, so to say? And of course, now pretty much every website has to charge sales taxes because the government wants their money. So I'm not too surprised this special registration caught up with the EV, them being registered. It'll be interesting to see how much they increase it throughout the years, depending on how much of a variable the gas tax is. But I always say, time shall tell. Other interesting political news, you have Trump's mugshot setting records for fundraising. Now, it looks like the day that his mugshot came out, he raised more money in that one day alone than the entire campaign, which is huge. So according to last Friday, the day following his arrest in Georgia, Trump raised $4.18 million, which is astronomical. And that was the highest grossing day of his entire campaign, according to the source, according to his campaign. And since he's raised that, so a couple days have passed, he's raised $7.1 million since he was booked for the mugshot. That is a lot of merchandise and donations. Now, it'll be interesting to see, though, how long do the donations increase or stay the same? Because a lot of people, again, we have 40-year hyperinflation, uncertainty with the economy. A lot of people are just struggling to get by. How long can people sustain the donations to him? And also, unlike his competitors, the government's, in terms of the political chessboard, they kind of put him in a little corner because his money isn't going towards online advertising or putting up flyers everywhere. It's also going to fight his legal cases. So his resources are being stolen, some might say. So not only is his time and location geographically fixed at a lot of these court dates, but he's having to spend more and more money on all these legal fees. So it'll be interesting to see, do the donations increase throughout the campaign? And what kind of effect it's going to have on his overall campaign when, again, the resources are being put into legal fees and the odds are seemingly put against him. Also, it's just, there's a lot of merchandise, but it'll be interesting to see what's going to be his next hit. The hat was huge. People love the hat. I feel like he needs a comeback or a different item for marketing. Something a little bit different that goes viral. Just from a marketing and business perspective, I feel like they got to do something a little bit more different than last time. But it'll be interesting to see. Time shall tell. Going on to the business blunder of the day, you have 3M on track for the largest mass tort in U.S. history. Now, 3M is one of the largest engineering companies on the planet. Not only do they make everything from sandpaper to spray paint, but they make even the most advanced perhaps not so advanced, hearing protection with the foam earplugs, safety glasses, respirators, gas masks. They are a very diverse company. Basically, if it takes a modicum of engineering talent to make it, they probably make it. Now, it looks like the agreement is they're nearing an agreement for $5.5 billion for over 300,000 U.S. veterans. Now, they allege that the company's earplugs failed to protect them from hearing loss while serving in the U.S. military. Now, the 3M board of directors has not vetoed the proposal, and they have said that the earplugs work correctly when used properly. So I think that's going to be a difficult thing to prove in court. How do you prove when they were on the battlefield they were used properly? Do they document that? Do they have photo evidence of that? Again, I'm not saying they shouldn't pay out. I'm just wondering from a legal perspective, are they going to prove that, or are they going to just pay it out to avoid the negative publicity? Because obviously, the United States, better than any other country, actually respects and honors our veterans. It'll be interesting to see, does 3M just pay this off just to get rid of the negative publicity? Because a lot of these lawsuits can last years, and that's not good for PR and legal resources. So it looks like they're on track to reach it. Will the board of directors vote on it? That's another topic in and of itself. It'll be interesting to see where they go from there. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. Again, we're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of August, so you can click that button. I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, don't forget to take the time to leave a comment, like the video. The feedback is greatly appreciated. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.